Welcome to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today, I'd like to talk about some changes that are happening in work from home strategies, as I came across an article on resilience.org in mid-April, and I thought, who should I talk to about that? So I reached out to someone who hasn't been on the show for a while, and I'd like to welcome back the National Director of Business Continuity at Southern Glazer Wine and Spirits, John Liuzzi. John, welcome back.
Alex, how you doing today? It's good to see you. Appreciate always great to talk with you and appreciate the invitation to address your audience today. Absolutely looking forward to it. Sure.
Well, I'm glad you could find the time to come and
Yeah.
chat with us today. I really appreciate it. So let's jump straight into this.
Sure.
The article talks about the work from home, how leaders are and organizations are calling everyone back to the office. And I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about that. Why is
Sure.
it that leaders still need to quote unquote see everyone working when remote work actively promotes resiliency and business continuity?
I mean, it's really kind of a mindset change, to be honest with you. I mean, there's a lot of jobs that are still required to be in the office, I will tell you that. And there's a lot of old, what I would call leadership that still has the mentality of, I have to be able to touch my workers, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that equates to productivity, being able to see them and touch them and look over their shoulder. That equates to productivity, right? So it's a paradigm shift about how management has to engage employees associated with, how do I now go to a more performance-based type of looking at my employees associated with whether they're getting the job done or not, and maybe establishing some KPIs and some dashboards and metrics and things like that associated with that. It's just a different way of managing, but right now you're still in this, a lot of folks are still, I need to touch those employees, right?
Yeah.
Associated to really understand whether or not they're being productive or not. So they have to. So not only do the employees have to kind of change and things like, but it's also the management mentality has to change in how you approach and how you engage and how you evaluate those workers for their performance, that type of thing, right? Um, I mean, and then the other thing is that there's just some jobs that you really need to be in a room together. I'll be honest with you, right? So we saw that here where we had a lot more of what I would call of the distributed, where folks would work from home for more days, right? Now we're back to like a 4-1 mix associated with that, 4 days in, 1 day remote, right? And the idea is that there's just so much more that gets done when everybody's sitting in the same room. I can do a whiteboard session. It's just a lot easier. I can have conversations in the hallway with people. So there's a lot that you miss, to be honest with you, by not being embedded in the office culture associated with that and just the day-to-day buzz that goes on, that potentially, you see that when you're working remote, right? You're kind of sort of in a lot of ways somewhat out of the loop. And for us, for what we do, I mean, we're a hospitality company. We support all of our customers and things like that. So, coming up with strategies and doing, and even tough to do a wine tasting remote, if you know what I mean, right? But the idea is that it's just that, there's a sense of just of belonging and being together and being able to kind of sit and chat about things face to face. That's very different, and you could, there's body language associated with that. There's expressions, there's gestures and things like that that are just different than being, on a remote type of a thing where you kind of lose all that. So our leadership kind of saw that as one of our strengths, to be honest with you, associated with that, as far as that fact that we do collaborate and we do all, have that close collaboration and meeting with people and things like that and being able to kind of bounce ideas off of each other face to face, that type of thing. And so hence that was kind of where the decision went associated with that. But again, it's each organization's culture and it's the nature of what the job is that kind of really more determines whether or not work from home is the appropriate strategy for an organization. So
What about those that, because we have a generation now that has worked from home for the last six years or so,
sure,
that's never been in an office. So
right.
they haven't missed out on this collaboration stuff or chats in the hallway or water cooler talk, as the old expression used to be. They don't have that. And then you've got people that have changed their work life or their own personal lives in being able to drop off their kids or pick up their kids now. And those that are introverts like me, who I cannot tolerate someone when I'm busy in the office poking their head over the cubicle wall, interrupting me, excuse me, and then it takes me 10, 15 minutes to try and get back into that original frame of mind of being interrupted. So how do we deal
Right.
with that kind of thing and balance that with, like you said, old mentality, management and leadership sometimes? How do you find that balance?
I mean, it's again, it's really just outlining what each individual, role is and the job is to determine what's the right, model for how can that job be successful and basically, whether it's remote or in the office. But the idea is that just understanding the dynamics of that. But if you're putting together what I would call the job description of what a remote job would be, I mean, you want to make sure you have clear expectations about what it is from a remote perspective, as well as from an office perspective. And it's not only for the employee, but it's also for the manager. The managers, I think there's a lot of managers right now that have to be retrained around how to manage a remote workforce and how that's different from managing a workforce that's sitting right outside my door. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
a cultural thing, but it's also a leadership responsibility to figure out, okay, so this is the new workforce of the future, and this is the environment that's moving forward, right? This balance type of a thing. Then I need to understand how I personally, as well as for the company's objectives, that we create the right structure and the right foundation for what are the principles, guidance, protocols, those type of things, as well as the tools. I need to make sure that they have the right tools, whether that's connectivity, whether that's security, infrastructure, access to cloud systems, and all those other technical things associated with that. I need to make sure that they also have the right tools and those tools are functioning properly so that they can be as productive as they can when they are out of sight, potentially out of mind. Let's put it that way. So,
I like what you said about clearly defining the expectations for work at home and in the office. I think a lot of times it's always focused on or the office or it's just in general. And if you can clearly define what the expectations are for both, then the employee or the manager won't make assumptions on their own, which will only then hurt the employee and the manager and leadership in the organization in overall.
right. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I have a personal, to be honest, I have a personal story of my own myself is the fact that, okay, my son now, he was working remotely for the first few years of his, came out right out of school, was working remotely, my job 100% remote. And now he's now taken another role where he's now in the office every day. He likes being in the office much better. And the whole idea is because of the fact that there's a sense of belonging, if you know what I mean, when you're there and talking with people and the dynamics. And you can talk about not only about the business and the work and things like that, but you can also talk, hey, what happened in the game last night, if you know what I mean, or the last movie you saw over the weekend, and those type of things. So the fact that he gets embraced by that entire culture and being a sense of belonging and part of a team and making new friendships that essentially and it also helps with networking, if you know what I mean, because that's a really important part of anybody's to
Mhm.
go in their career is growing your network. And how do you do that more successfully? And developing those one-to-one personal relationships is a very, very strong way to kind of develop and build your network, which helps you advance and grow your career. So those are also all part of considerations for me personally or me coaching anybody, especially when you're younger in your career. I mean, you really need to have what I would call face presence with people to get your credibility, right? People see who you are, how you react, how you respond, your facial expression, your verbal, your hand expressions and things like that. If people understand who you are and they can see your presence, how you respond to certain things, that helps them evaluate whether or not, hey, you know what, this person can do other things, and this person I can well promote this person, right? It's just tough to evaluate that on a person that's always on a Zoom call. If you know what I
Mm.
mean, there's certain things about being in front of people and having that presence that will do you so much more for your career, especially when you're younger in your career when you're trying to develop that. Because once you get to where you and I are, right? People know who we are, and they've been with us before, and they kind of get where we're at, and they know exactly what we're capable of, right? When you're younger in your career, you're still trying to establish that. And the best way to establish that is being face to face in front of people. So I always coach and counsel younger folks is that, yeah, I get that we want to work from home every day and those type of things, but understand you may be shortchanging your career in the long term when doing that. So
Yeah, the work from home thing doesn't seem as black and white, cut and dry. There's so many different facets. Like you mentioned a few things. Our level of experience, shall we say, uh, and where we are in our careers. If how are we just coming out of school? Do we already have a network? Do we have to create a network? You've got introverts and extroverts. People that enjoy being around large groups and chatting about things, and then others who just like leave me alone. I'm here to get my work done. If I've got time, I'll come talk to you. Right now, I'm focused. People don't like, or I should say, everyone's got a different feeling. So trying to get a handle on this can be quite the challenge for leadership.
Yeah, I mean, people need to also understand when they apply for a job, they should, and it is a work from home job or a remote job, they need to understand what that really means
Yeah,
and what that really is going to mean for their career, right? Not just, oh, this is convenient, this is great. I mean, think the long term, how this is going to benefit me, right? Is this going to get me to the next level where I want to be, right? Associated from a level of responsibility and promotions and things like that. It's just so important for folks to just kind of really evaluate. And don't, let's put it this way, if you're not a person that does, if you're a person that likes being around people and are gregarious and stuff like that, don't apply for a work from home job. I mean, you're just not going to be happy with that, right? So understand, making sure who you are as a person, looking at doing introspective of yourself to understand exactly what's the best job fit for me not only be successfully personally but also professionally.
right. Um, I was wondering too, is the work from home strategy, because that used to be everyone's contingency, right? At some
Sure.
point, oh, if anything happens, we'll send everyone home. That's our contingency. Now that we do have people working from home, that contingency is almost the norm now. It's not a contingency. But does that open up organizations to additional risk with people working from home?
Well, I mean, there's no question about the fact that having remote people strengthens and is an operational strength, to be honest with you, because certain things, if things happen, let's put at this facility that I'm in right now or anything else like that, I mean, or regional type of a situation, a regional type of disaster, stuff like that. The fact that I have people remote that can still keep the company going and still keep doing their job, that's an operational strength. There's no question about the fact that it does play into that, right? So I mean, but does it support I mean, so eliminates some of my facility-based risks, right? It gives me some geographic diversity associated with that. But you also need to have, make sure you have the right, cybersecurity in place and digital infrastructure in place and, management things in place to make that being successful, right? But certainly there is a component of it that does eliminate risk, but it also kind of brings some other risk in there because now you have, especially I think about the information security risk around having remote people and having information sensitive, potentially sensitive information out of what I would call the four walls, if you know what I mean, associated with that. So, and again, that's doing a business impact assessment and a risk assessment associated with that, kind of the standard business continuity things that we do for a business process, because now that business process is potentially outside of, what I would call a protected space. An organization needs to understand that and evaluate that to figure out whether or not that's the right strategy, as well as if it is, then let's make sure we have the right controls around it to make sure that it operates in a secure and continuous manner. So.
Yeah. We're coming to the end of the episode. John, is there anything you'd like to share regarding work from home or resilience strategies, continuity, anything that maybe should be addressed that maybe isn't getting addressed?
No, I mean, I think it's just every organization just needs to do their own assessment of what that means and make sure that they set the right expectations. And it's really about, okay, so if this is a viable strategy for our organization, we do have work that we can do remotely. Okay, that's great. Now let's make sure we find the right people that fit into that and they're going to be happy doing that, right? Because you also want to make sure that people have not only that work-life balances, but they also want to feel like they're part of a team and they're growing and things like that. So from a career perspective, so it becomes a management responsibility that maybe those people need more care and feeding because they are remote. They're all kind of, you don't see them on a day-to-day basis. So it just requires a different set of a different management discipline associated with just being able to understand that, a remote workforce could be very, very productive for us, but it also has its challenges around how we manage it and how do we make it as productive as we can. So,
My thought is also that it's something you have to continually evaluate as
yeah.
roles change, as the organization changes as well. Sometimes what needed to be brought back in the office may have more leverage to work from home and what worked at home because the role and activities have changed might need to come back into the office more often. I see it something you have to reevaluate all the time, not just a one-time thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people also need to understand if I'm going to, be remote or work from home, if at some point in time the company says, you know what, John, you need to be in the office, you need to be ready for that day. I mean, I think you need to understand the fact that the company's going to make decisions that potentially for their own profitability as well as for own viability of an organization, right? So there are potentially, understanding that there is a risk on that side that potentially a job could convert because why it now becomes necessary, or maybe you got a promotion into something else, which now requires you, to be in the office. So that, so you don't want to limit your career. Let's put it that way. By just thinking one way, you want to understand the fact that you need to have some flexibility. So at some point in time, a work from home job potentially could turn into being in the office. And you need to be able to kind of understand the dynamics of that and be flexible. And if that provides you with growth opportunities. So,
Right. Yeah, I think that's an important point. We always promote adaptability. We have ourselves have to have some level of adaptability
yeah,
as well and negotiate. You want me in the office 5 days a week? Well, what about four? Or
yeah,
something like that. We have to be adaptable where we can, and so does the leadership. If you want your employees to be adaptable, we have to be as leaders, we would have to be adaptable as well. And then you're going to find the
right.
best fit for everybody.
And the other thing people need to realize is that maybe potentially that if I'm working from home, maybe that job doesn't pay me the same as it was if I was going to be in the office. I mean,
Hmm.
for various reasons. I mean, I've seen that happen a lot where a job is great because why? If, employers have figured out, hey, there's a commuting expense, there's a time expense associated with that. Now that's all been eliminated. So now potentially I could pay you less associated with the job because I'm providing you with other things that are other services or other things that are now beneficial to you that you have value on, which are now something that I don't have to compensate you for.
Right.
So folks need to understand that as well from a compensation perspective that there could be impacts because of the fact that a job is a remote job or work from home job and not a job that's actually physically in an office. So I've seen that happen as well. So
That's an important point. I don't think that one has been mentioned often enough, but that's important. John, thank you so much for sharing your time and thoughts on this. I really appreciate it.
Alex, it's always good to see you, and I look forward to our next conversation. But
Yeah,
reach
it
out
won't be so
anytime.
long next time.
You just stay well, take care of yourself, and it was like once again great to see you.